Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
One thing you don't need to shy away from is this. This is tax season. This last month of December of every year is tax season. And some of you are going, well, I don't want to capitalize on that. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And I just heard this from a youth pastor. There's so many people asking for so much. Isn't your ministry more important than all those other things out there? Well, no, there's missionaries. No, you're a missionary. You're a missionary. That tax money belongs to you as well, to where people are at the end of the year giving the most they could ever give. In fact, you could start in January again asking for the entire year to set their taxes up to where one of the things they give to is student ministry, because we're investing in the future. Remember, everything in your life is going to be probably changed by the students that you lead to Jesus and their world vision, world God view that they get, because it's going to come back to affect you and your children and how they live, because those are leaders being changed to be leaders right now. Don't be afraid of income tax season. That's when everybody asks, because that's when people are the most giving. They've got to get it so they can get tax credit. That's not your fault. That's where the government is. So make sure you capitalize on it for ministry. So here we are at the end of a year. Now, you may listen to this year, the year that I create this, or you may be listening to it next year, or you may be listening to it a year after we've created this content. But either way, it's a good thing for you to listen to. And that is about fundraising. See, I was talking to a youth pastor the other day, and he was asking about a fundraiser that I had done. So we discussed it and started talking about it. And as I was giving him some suggestions and things to do and some things to avoid, he said, you know what, you need to make an episode about that. And I said, I think I have done it before and talked about some of these things, but I'll be very specific and talk a little bit about fundraising. So I've written some things down to make sure that I get at least the first part of this right, so you kind of get the understanding. And whether or not you are a parent, a youth pastor, part-time, full-time, volunteer full-time, whoever you are, board member, church, whoever, whether it's in a public school, private school, it just doesn't matter. Fundraising is fundraising, and we do it right or we do it wrong. It becomes a headache or whatever. And it's going to be a blessing or a nightmare. Which is it? They can be both. Two types of people. Occasionally, some are both. But here are the two types, in my opinion. And I think you could find other places to verify this. Usually, you are either good at ministering to people, number one, or number two, you are good at fundraising. Now, I started off in Youth for Christ. Everything we had to fundraise or we didn't get paid. We had to fundraise or we didn't take students on trips. We had to meet people face to face. It wasn't a church. I found that when I got to a church, it was much easier. Number one, I got a salary. Now, if you're not salaried, that makes it a little bit tough too. That means you're bivocational, or you're having to raise your funds there as well, which is always a possibility. But you're either good at one or the other. And that was true in Youth for Christ and other organizations, Fellowship Christian Athletes, Young Life, Crew, whatever your place is, you're probably good at one or the other. There's a rare few people that are good at both. Those people are just amazing and very well gifted. But it's not even about them. See, it doesn't matter. It's not about you. It's about God. It always boils down to that, doesn't it? It's about you transferring your knowledge and your abilities to others. And when you're not good at something that you find somebody, then you find somebody else that is. We often say if we show by example and do it all, the people will follow our example of doing. Most of the time, that's not true. Did you hear that? Not true. You must do a little, show a lot, and hand it over. What we want to do is rescue people when they start falling and failing. All that means is now we discourage them to think that they are not good enough and we are better than them and that we will have to rescue them, and they'll let you, by the way. They will let you. Do you have to help them find a way to win? Yes, you have to help them find a way to win and never win for them. That's what Jesus did to his disciples. He did not win for them. Time after time, they were frustrated, and he would say, do it this way. Remember, the net was over one side of the boat. He said, throw the net on the other side of the boat. What are we going to do about taxes? Get this fish. They got a fish, and he brought it to him, and there's a coin in the fish's mouth. And he told them about paying to Caesar what was Caesar's, and on it goes. But he was showing them because he was preparing them to do the work. Do you believe God has put you in the most important ministry that the church has to offer? I say this, and some people, I'm sure, will cringe, but the reason they cringe because they've seen people unbalanced. They've seen churches unbalanced. Give it all to students or give it all to missionaries and do nothing for the people and fall short here. No, you've got the whole church has to be balanced. Even in parachurch organizations are there because the church is not balanced. We're not doing enough evangelism. We're not working together as churches as a whole. We're not paying our pastors well. We're not tithing our 10% and then giving gifts and offerings. And that's a whole other issue right there. But we're going back to fundraising. Don't hang up yet. Don't turn this off. Don't stop listening, because I'm going to take you somewhere. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. You know that verse. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Okay, well, that's God talking to you. Going, listen, I value what you're doing with these students. Don't spend all your time on this fundraiser to raise $100. Are you listening to that? How many of us have done that over and over? Car washes, 6 hours, 8 hours, the day before, trying to get advertisement out, doing all kinds of things. What was the best car wash to do? The best car wash was the no-cost car wash where the Youth for Christ did this one time in New Orleans, I believe it was, and they got people on. You say, well, I'm a church. Okay, well, adapt it to the church in whatever way you can. We have social media, something we didn't have, that New Orleans didn't have at that time. That was before my time. And they would have the radio announcers come on and say, free car wash at such and such a place. Youth for Christ is doing it. Come and get your car washed for free. What happened? Was their purpose for fundraising? No, their purpose was for impact. And they literally washed cars for free, and they want to see how many they could do. I think they washed 1,000 cars. It was crazy numbers, crazy. Whatever way they did it, and I don't know how, but it's all about organization and delegation, organization and delegation. Why are some student ministries larger than others? Why are some churches larger than others? It's because it's about delegation and organization. And Jesus was about all of those things. And then you put that God factor in of, if you've done all the organization you can, if you've done all the prep you can, then you ask God, will you bless this? If this is what you want and you want more for our students than we want, then you add his blessing on top of it and don't try to do it on your own. But what we do in fundraisers is we panic. I've done it. You've done it. We panic. And so we go, I've got to do all this. Well, wait a minute. We leave God out all of a sudden because we're in panic mode, not God mode. What a great idea. Free car wash. You get impact. What happens? People see students giving and not taking. They see them working in a massive way, not some little way of, please come and let us wash your car. It always just got me so scared when I see people have their students on the edge of a highway or a busy road begging people to come in, some scantily dressed. I kind of say scantily. That's an old word. And the other thing is we're teaching students that we're not worth much. We got to beg people to come in instead of prepping ahead and getting people going, this is coming. It's 3 weeks away. We want to wash this many cars. It's going to be for free. Have all your friends come. And at the end, people start giving anyway. Why? Because they see this great effort, this organized effort, this effort of hope and love coming from students and their staff. I'm not telling you to do a car wash. I'm telling you that if something isn't going to raise you $1,000 to $5,000 to $10,000, then do it for free. If you're only going to raise $100, it'll be worth it for you not to do it and take $100 out of your pocket and to give it to your own student ministry. That is more saving money and saving your time. The other thing is that other people would do, we've done something like this before, and that is like a no-show banquet. No-show banquet was you send out letters to your entire congregation or people that you know if they're on your student ministry list, parents of those people, as well as people in the community, whatever, because at our church, we would invite entire schools to come to things. Why would we invite entire schools to come to mass impact events? Because you only get 1 to 10%. 1 to 10%. If you have 1,000 people in a school, you may get 10, you may get 100. But people don't realize that, so they panic. They go, no, why? We can't invite everybody. Well, you don't understand. They don't necessarily want to come. They're only going to come if they feel like there's something there, and only a percentage of them are going to come because everybody is busy. And they're very busy, almost too busy for fundraisers too. Your students are. Are you respectful of their time? Are you respectful of the things that are going on? So you can do the no-show banquet where you send out a letter and say, we know that your time is worth a lot, and so we're going to do this no-show banquet, and all we ask that you would send us the money that it would cost you to come to this banquet. The banquet normally would cost you $25. You would normally have to bring a dish of food or whatever, whatever you want to say there. Will you give that much to help us go to this ministry trip? When it was missions, we would write letters. We spent hundreds and hundreds of hours preparing for a TV fundraiser for a church. It's funny to look back at now and stuff, but we had some people that could actually do that. So we did that. We spent hundreds of hours on other types of fundraisers to go do missions work. Is that what we do for our missionaries, by the way? Do we say, we want to give to you, but you got to go do at least 20 car washes for us to raise $30,000 to $100,000 to $50,000 for you, to go minister around the world and rip your family out of the United States and go to another country and live there in possibly hardships and danger or whatever. And so please go do some car washes and have a few pancakes. No. You let them tell their story, and then you move people's hearts, and then you let them give. Here's what started happening. So I gave you a couple of fundraisers that you can do, and those are good. But I will also tell you this. If you're the youth worker, if you're the guy in charge, do not run those fundraisers. If you have to run them, they're not the right fundraiser. You've got to find a parent that will run it, not your students. They're not ready for that yet. Unless you have a rare student that you've seen that have started businesses, at the age of 10 and 11 and become millionaires by the time they're 15, or if you've got people that you've seen do some magnificent stuff. Those people are rare, and yes, they can, if they've got a track record in their middle school and high school of doing stuff. But you want to get parents that are going, and you ask them, listen, you do not make people do fundraisers. You don't make them do anything. You let them know how important the mission is and how much money up front is needed, and that we're here to give to people who cannot afford to go, as well as to help our students who can afford to go, but to take some of the burden off of their family. You've got to sell what God would sell. Our students are beyond valuable. If we don't do these things for them, there's a whole world biting at their bit all the time, trying to get them into everything else except what God wants. And if you can't sell that, you need to start reevaluating. God, what are you having me do here? What's important? And start working on those items that you tell people. You know what? When I didn't have to raise my salary, it was a lot easier. Although God gave me a way to raise the salary, He didn't do it. He didn't show me how to raise it. He basically brought people along that saw what we were doing for 3 years in Youth for Christ, and my next 3 years were paid for because of what God was doing that I was not doing. I wasn't even capable. I was learning, and it wasn't even a place I wanted to be. But God wanted me there, and showed me that over and over again, and then started funding me. When I went to a church, it was so much easier because I had to raise all the funds and do that sort of thing, and lived in poverty for 3 years of that 6 years. When I got to a church, all I had to do was raise funds for students. That was so much easier. I would tell them about what we're going to do with the students. I had a background of knowing where to take them and what to do with them. And they started seeing movement in the community. They started seeing movement in their church. They started seeing lives changed. Did every life change? No. Were some parents disappointed? Yes. But you know what? You're going to have some wins and some losses, and it's not going to be in your control. It's in God's control. Some of those students that gave their parents a hard time, their parents gave you a hard time, are going to come back to you at the end of that first 5 years. Some of them are going to go, I heard you the whole time. I just was not in a place where I was ready to accept Jesus. Just not in a place to where I was just a teenager and I could not give myself over to do the right things, but I heard you and it was because of you. They're going to come back and tell you that. So you need to sell these things. I'm not telling you to be a salesman. I am a terrible salesman, but I could show people, students, I could show them vision and say, here's where we're going. Here's the trip we're going to go on. Here's what we expect it to do. Here's the next place. Here's the mission trip we're going to go on and what we expect to happen. After a while, it got to where the church, and I'm talking after the first 5 years, and then after the end of 10 years, I was there 29, then the boards and individuals really got on board, and they started saying, we don't want your volunteer staff to have to pay anymore. We're going to pay their way. What was the best fundraiser I did? The best fundraiser I did was I kept bringing students back in front of the church after every trip. I started bringing staff to tell their story after every trip. The church was inspired not by my words, but by my volunteers' words, but by students' words. Did they always speak very clearly and well? No. But it was so real that the heart of the congregation of the church was so changed. They expected good things to happen, but they had no idea what they were signing up for when they brought me on from an organization like Youth for Christ. And so they started paying my staff's way, not just mine. They started putting a fund that was just there for student retreats and making sure that there was money in that fund. And we would still do fundraisers. But we tried to make sure that those fundraisers were going to make no less than $1,000, and they really need to make $2,000 to $5,000, or they weren't worth us taking the time, because we were busy doing ministry in the schools, in our congregation, with our students, discipleship, meeting after meeting after meeting with regular meetings and impact meetings, bringing the community in and letting the community know that our church, through our student ministry, loved the community. We loved our school administrators in public and private schools. We loved the students that they loved. So how do you fundraise? You grow a passion for students and you keep bringing it before the church. You get ahead of the church and don't let the church drag you along to where you want to go, because most churches don't know where student ministry needs to go. That's up to you to figure out what God is doing and go that way and trust Him and do the fundraisers you need to, but not by your hands, not by your giftedness. You be a delegator and an organizer. And the things that God has gifted you to do need to be done in the best way and the most organized way that it's not wasting your talents. So that's what I got for you this time on fundraisers. You've got 2 there, at least, that you could do. There are many, many others, but the question you need to always ask is, what is it worth our time to do? And can I approach an individual or individuals or the congregation, if the church lets you? Some churches won't even let you. That God will show me who to go to that will say, I'll fund somebody. And by the way, over the years, people started going, I will fund this person over here. I know they don't have the money. I will fund this person for that trip. Don't be afraid of big ticket trip items and retreat items. Why? Because I don't want to go to something I'm not excited about. Do you? And students don't either. You're competing with sports. You're competing, if you live in Central Florida, with theme parks. They don't need me to take them to a theme park. If I do, it was Rock the Universe or Night of Joy or something like that was created by Christians for Christians in these theme parks. And Universal, through Student Leadership University, created Rock the Universe, which is designed for teenagers. And I would not try to take them other times other than that, because they're going to go on their own, right? So you do the same for your area. Where do you know? What conference do you need to take them to? If they're college students, you need to take them to Passion Conference. I don't know of anything bigger than Passion. If you have to do a part of a denomination, go find the biggest denominational thing that's happening, whether it's missions or whether it's a conference, and some things only happened every 3 years, and that was good, because every 3 years a group of students got to go and get their world rocked to see the future and get God's world vision for their life and for ministry. So there you go. That's a fundraiser in a box.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.